Welcome to another episode of the MMA Lock-Cast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMA LOTN. This week, we're going to be going over UFC Denver, which is highlighted by Yair Rodriguez and Chan Sung Jung, aka Korean Zombie for all you guys. I think it's a great event that we got coming up. The one thing that always comes into play with Denver is the altitude, so we're going to really see a test of a lot of fighters' cardio in this event. So that should be something to think of when you're betting on this card. But quickly going over my last week, which was UFC 230, I had 4 bets for you guys. I had 2 Lock of the Night plays as well as 2 Dog of the Night plays. I took... let's just put it this way. I got bent over and fucked without even getting any type of dinner, wine, nothing. I got fucked. Let's just go by, fights quickly, just to break it down. Jack Marshman, Carl Robertson. I had fight doesn't go to decision. Unfortunately, Carl Robertson sustained an injury, I think, in the first or second round, and he was forced to take more of a wrestling approach to the fight. I believe that he had the power and the stand-up ability to knock out Jack Marshman, who is a durable and tough guy. However, Carl Robertson is a guy who's been competing in professional kickboxing for a long time as well. Very heavy hands, a lot of finishes on his record as well. Unfortunately, Jack Marshman's chin held up when he did get caught. And with Carl Robertson, that injury really fucked that play for me. And I'm sure a lot of people were on that play as well. So, there's a little bit of explanation behind that, but you still got to take the L when they come, right? At the end of the day, if it worked in reverse and I picked the fight to go to a decision, I'd be happy as fuck, right? So moving on to the next fight, Lando Venata and Matt Frevola, I picked that fight for us to not go to a decision as well. Unfortunately, Matt Frevola's chin held up a little bit better than I thought it would have. There were plenty of moments where Lando Venata could have finished this fight when he dropped Matt Frevola numerous times in that fight. Unfortunately, Matt Frevola, a testament to his chin. He held it together, and he did what he had to do to get back into the fight. Even after that shellacking of a second round, he was able to, pull off that third round and got the draw. At the end of the day, as much as Matt Frevola got fucked up in that fight, the fact that he even came away with the draw is kind of a blessing. But regardless, I thought even if Venata wasn't able to finish Frevola, Frevola has the tenacity and the aggressiveness to finish Venata. That didn't happen either, so that was a little bit, disheartening as well to go through. My first Dog of the Night play, which was Julio Arce to win inside the distance, that was a nasty cut. I've been watching MMA for close to 10 years now, and that's one of the more nastier cuts you'll ever see. It was just like a short, sharp upwards elbow from Sheymon Moraes that caused that cut on Julio Arce, and it was ridiculous how much blood came out. Like, it was crazy. They were both just drenched, and it looked like they bathed in Julio Arce's blood. I think that really played a factor into Arce's performance to that third round. We see a little bit more of a pace from him. We see him a little bit more aggressive. But all props to Sheymon Moraes. He came out, he did the job, he got the victory, he got the decision, and with Sheymon Moraes, you're talking about a guy who only has 2 losses. 1 loss to Marlon Moraes and 1 loss to Zabit Magomedsharipov. And those are 2 guys, not a lot of people lose or can get a win over. So, a big win over Julio Arce puts him right into the discussion up there, with those top 10, top 15 guys. So he's going to be interesting to see progressing a little bit further into his UFC career. And then lastly, I had Daniel Cormier by submission. The only regret I have about this bet, even though I hit, was that I wish I put a little bit more on it. Maybe I was a little bit frightened by the fact that the odds were at plus 200 for that. I don't know why I let that affect me. However, I took the 0.5 unit stab. We got a 1 unit of profit on that play. But in this case, when I bet Daniel Cormier against Stipe Miocic, I went 2 units deep, and I felt like I could have done that this time around too. But there was that possible. That possibility that Cormier would have landed a knockout punch as well. So it is what it is. I felt like the unit management did its job in terms of getting me the return that I was looking for. Unfortunately, my other bets just completely shit the bed. So that's pretty much what happened at UFC 230, but we got to fucking move forward. It's a long-term game. I've been killing it the last several events, so I was telling a lot of people, I've created a pond already, and there's just a bucket out of it. So we're going to move forward. We got UFC Denver coming up this weekend. I'm fucking stoked. I just locked in my 3 bets today. I just posted that, so make sure, if you guys haven't seen that, check out my Twitter. But either way, I'm going to break them down for you guys right now anyway. So let's get right down to it. Decent card overall. As I mentioned at the top of the show, this is at altitude, so anybody that's really had issues with cardio in the past, it might be an even bigger factor this time around. Or guys we never thought had cardio issues might, it might rear its ugly head this time. So, first fight of the night, we got Mark De La Rosa versus Joby Sanchez. Joby Sanchez, Albuquerque product, Jackson Winko John guy. I've always been impressed with this guy. I've seen him compete even way back at UFC Boston when Conor McGregor actually fought Dennis Seaver. He fought Tateki Matsuda that night. He won a split decision in a very close fight, and I thought there was a little bit of potential in this guy. I was very intrigued by his style. He's kind of a long fighter at that flyweight division. Uses his kicks very well, and pretty overall good fighter. Before the Tateki Matsuda fight, he took his first loss to Wilson Hayes, but at that time in 2014, Wilson Hayes was still one of the top 5 flyweights in the world, so you can't really knock him for that. Plus, it was a short notice fight. Unfortunately, he lost to Gian Herrera, and for some reason they caught him right after that. He only had a 1-2 record in the UFC, but for some reason they just dropped him. They let him go, and in that time he's amassed 4 straight victories. He's coming back, and he came back and he fought Roberto Sanchez and got choked out at UFC Austin earlier this year. And now he has Mark De La Rosa ahead of him, who's in my opinion, I think he's one of the better guys at that flyweight division. His only loss has been to Tim Elliott, which was up at bantamweight. He made his flyweight debut against Elias Garcia, got a rear naked choke in that fight in the second round, and I think that's where the jiu-jitsu and the ability to get the fight from the stand-up phase or the stand-up part of the fight to the ground, and I think that's where Mark De La Rosa will be able to shine. We've seen Joby Sanchez kind of been able to get held up against the cage. He's been muscled around a couple times, and I think that Mark De La Rosa is going to be no different. I think he's going to get him against the cage. He's going to pull him down, and then from there, he has a lot of wins by submission. He really likes the rear naked choke as well. He's amassed about 6 submission finishes in his 9 wins, pro wins. So Joby Sanchez has shown some weaknesses when it comes to the jiu-jitsu game, and I think that's where Mark De La Rosa is going to shine, and he's going to get a submission, I'm going to say probably second round. Moving on to the next fight, we got Eric Shelton against Joseph Morales. This is a fight I didn't bother looking into too much. I feel like both guys are kind of relatively at the same skill level at this point. Eric Shelton's kind of a longer flyweight. He's standing at 5'6" with a 68-inch reach. His reach really, shows when he's fighting these other smaller guys in that flyweight division. He hasn't had the best run since he's come off the Ultimate Fighter show. He dropped 2 straight fights to Alexander Pantoja and Jared Brooks. Came back and beat Janelle Lausa, and then lost in his last fight against the Team Alpha Male product in Alex Perez. This time he comes back and he fights Joseph Morales. The line is kind of even at the moment. Joseph Morales sitting at 9-1 with his only loss being to Division Figueroa, who is one of the top flyweights out there right now. Could possibly even be in their line for a title shot, depending on what the fuck is going on with the flyweight division with Demetrius Johnson gone now. But again, that's a completely different story for another podcast. So we got Morales and Shelton. I think that Shelton's range might play a little bit of factor into this matchup. He has a good wrestling base as well. I think Joseph Morales might have some issues trying to close the distance and get his game off. So you know what? I'm just going to take Eric Shelton by decision. I just think he's going to have the stronger, better wrestling and better sense of range in this fight. Next fight, we got a complete squash match, a -1,000 favorite in Davi Ramos against, for some reason, everybody's favorite fighter, John Gunther. Everybody says this guy is... I just want to show my man Big Rob this guy. Look at this guy's picture. This guy, apparently he has alpacas as pets. Yeah, like he does some weird shit. He's 7-0, which is hilarious considering the fact that everybody thinks he's probably the shittiest fighter in the UFC right now. He pulled off a majority majority decision over Alan Zuniga in his last fight. But the most surprising one is his victory over Devonte Smith, who fights later in the card. Smith has looked like a complete wrecking machine from everything that we see from him. And then you dig up this John Gunther tape, and you're like, okay, if he's not able to put somebody out, and the other person can actually show a little bit of a chin and not wilt under the aggression and forward pressure of Devonte Smith, we get a guy like John Gunther who's able to just, hold on to Devonte Smith and gas him out, take a little bit more punishment, but was able to just impose his grappling when Devonte Smith wasn't able to get his striking off, or at least, enough to put John Gunther completely out. But this is a completely different fight. We got Davi Ramos, who's a legitimate black belt, just ridiculous black belt skills with his jiu-jitsu. John Gunther's game, everything we've seen from him is he wants to just rush in there and get a hold of you and try to take you down and just lay on you. You're not doing that against Davi Ramos. You're absolutely not doing that against Davi Ramos. That is exactly what Ramos wants. He wants John Gunther to get in there and make it easier for him. So it's going to be very intriguing to see where John Gunther comes and what kind of game plan he tries to implement when his game plan has always been pressure, 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 wrestling. John, Ramos wants that, like I said. So John Gunther's striking, from what I've seen, has not been the greatest. He's very sloppy with it. Davi Ramos could probably even put him out too. So I just don't see any path to victory for John Gunther in this fight. So there doesn't really need to be much more of an in-depth breakdown of this fight. Davi Ramos is either going to knock John Gunther out, or he's going to fucking pull off some sort of helicopter armbar or some shit like that and catch John Gunther. So I'm going to say first round finish for Davi Ramos, submission. Next fight, we got Julian Erosa versus Devonte Smith. This is actually my only lock of the night play. I got this fight to not go to a decision. I believe I got minus 245. The fight was about minus 225 yesterday. I waited a day too long, but I just wanted to take the night to kind of consider my options and, just feel comfortable with that bet. And when I woke up this morning, I felt comfortable with the bet. And so I placed the bet. Unfortunately, again, I got minus 245. But I think that's still a great price on a fight between these two guys who are prominently stand-up strikers or stand-up fighters. Devonte Smith, like I said earlier, his only loss has been to John Gunther, which was when he's not able to put anybody out. Everybody else he's able to, tag and just absolutely annihilate. Most of his finishes have been in the first round, and I gotta say, if you have not seen Devonte Smith's finish of Fred Stonehouse, go to my man at Mr_Honky. Check out that fucking gif. I feel for Fred Stonehouse. He's a guy from Ottawa. I think I've crossed paths with him when I was on the local scene, but goddamn, that must have taken out 10 to 15 years of this guy's life. Like, one of the most ridiculous finishes I've ever seen. Pretty much the closest thing you'll see to a dead body. Anyway, get back to Devonte Smith. Only lost a bit to John Gunther. He had a very impressive performance when he fought Joseph Lowry on Dana White Contender Series. And in this fight with Julian Erosa, he gets a guy who's a little bit more weathered and a little bit more of a veteran than the guys he's fought in the past. So he's heavily favored in this fight, but I think that Julian Erosa, just his veteran ability or his experience alone, should make it a lot closer odds. And Julian Rosa has been on a little bit of a run as well. He's won 3 straight fights, especially with his last fight in Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. I had money on Jamal Emmers. I thought Jamal Emmers was going to be able to wrestle him, and unfortunately he just got pulled into the fire and went into a firefight with Julian Erosa. And I think that if Devonte Smith can't land that finishing shot, Julian Erosa is going to be able to land that finishing shot when Devonte Smith is not able to impose his will as he has in his last 9 wins. So I think that it will be a firefight. If we don't get a finish in the first round from Devonte Smith, it will probably be Julian Erosa in the next 2 rounds. Either way, I think we get a finish, whether it's round 1 or 3. personally, I'm going to say round 1. I think it's just going to be a firefight from the get-go, and Devonte Smith maybe overcommits on a looping hook. Either he gets the KO or Julian Erosa counters somehow and puts Devonte Smith out as well. So we get either or. Officially, my prediction is going to be Devonte Smith first round KO. Next fight, Beneil Dariush against Thiago Moises. This is also a dog of the night play for myself. I got 1 unit on Thiago Moises at plus 128. I think it's a great price considering all the skill sets and experience that are going into this fight for both guys. Beneil Dariush currently sits at 14-4-1. In his last 3 fights, he's gotten brutally knocked out in 2 of them. That's Barboza flying knee. That shit was just bonkers, crazy finish, in a fight that he was winning as well. Let's not forget about that. Beneil Dariush was winning that fight. He was kind of outstriking Edson Barboza to a sense, so that was interesting. And then eventually Edson Barboza was able to land the flying knee. He went to a unanimous draw or a majority draw in his last fight against Evan Dunham, and then he came back on a short notice fight against Alexander Hernandez and gets completely starched in 42 seconds. And now we all know about Alexander Hernandez. So considering the fact that Beneil Dariush has been put out twice brutally in the last year and a half or so, this is a very dangerous fight. And a guy like Thiago Moises, who's a very decorated black belt, just as Beneil Dariush is, but he has some heavy hands and he has some heavy striking. His technique is still improving. His base is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but those guys over at American Top Team are really doing a good job with Thiago Moises. I think that Thiago Moises, he will have a chance, even if it gets to the point, if it gets to the ground. I think it'll be competitive enough that Thiago Moises could possibly, get the better of Beneil Dariush, who I think is on a decline, and is, unfortunately, his health has shown for that as well. So I think whether it's contested on the feet, I think Thiago Moises has shown in his past fights that he's able to land big strikes, able to land big kicks, and rock and drop guys. And I think that could be the same thing in this fight. I think he could rock and drop Beneil Dariush, or if it gets to the ground, I'm going to take my chances on a plus 128 underdog who is also a very decorated grappler, just as Beneil Dariush is. So I'm personally going to take Thiago Moises with a second round KO finish, but he could also get the submission too. So I'm very confident in this fight, but I'm still only going to go with the 1 unit on Thiago Moises. Next fight, we got Skelly against Bobby Moffett. I didn't know much about Bobby Moffett going into this event. I talked to a couple of my friends about him. Excuse me. And as I started watching more fights on him, he kind of reminded me of Skelly, which is kind of funny. These guys are kind of mirror images of each other stylistically. They're both strong grapplers. I think Skelly is the more decorated wrestler, but Bobby Moffett just has that, grappling sense, that grappling aggression and pressure, where it's kind of like Gunther, but a little bit more refined and with more skills. He's able to land a dart stroke. He very much seeks those. He very much seeks his arm triangle chokes. So he's always actively looking for a finish. His ability to be able to get Skelly down in this fight may be the determining factor in who's actually going to take this fight. I think that Skelly's wrestling background will be able to keep this fight on the feet if he wants it to be there. And he might be playing with some fire if he tries to take it to the ground and try to out-grapple a younger and more explosive fighter in Bobby Moffett. But I think that Bobby Moffett is going to find a way to get this fight to the ground, because we have seen Skelly get taken down. But again, I just don't know to what ability that Bobby Moffett is able to actually, put his wrestling together. But somehow, some way, just as Alexei Oleinik was able to get Mark Hunt down, I think that Bobby Moffett is still going to somehow get Skelly down, and I think he'll unfortunately get a submission, because I like Skelly. Don't get me wrong, I like Skelly. He's a good guy, cool guy on Twitter to talk to and all that shit, but I just think that Bobby Moffett's youth, his strength, and his a little bit more explosiveness is going to be the determining factor in this fight. So I got Bobby Moffett by late second round finish. And something to also note in this fight, these guys have shown cardio issues. So again, this fight being in Denver, who knows, they might even get gassed after 1 round or something like that. So that's something to keep an eye on in this fight. Next fight, we got two smoke shows actually going against each other. I like Amanda Cooper and Ashley Yoder. You know, Amanda Cooper is one of those few fighters that has more losses than wins in the UFC, which is kind of laughable. But you know what? One thing I will give up to her, she does have a really good boxing game. You know, her striking is very crisp. She moves very well in her boxing stances. But when she fights anybody with some jiu-jitsu ability or any type of accolades in jiu-jitsu, she runs into trouble. She's a little bit of a fish out of water when it gets to the ground. I think that, you know, Mackenzie Dern, probably one of the best female jiu-jitsu players out there, so completely write that one off. Cynthia Calvillo was able to get her down and get the choke in that fight. Tatiana Suarez, we already know what the fuck is up with her. But, you know, she's beaten people like Anna Almos. She's beaten Angela Magana, who say what you want about her, but she's a vet. And she fought her in her 5th fight. So, in Ashley Yoder, you know, she's 5-4 right now. They call her the Spider Monkey for a good reason. She likes to just try to hop and take the back at any opportunity that she can. And I think her game plan in this fight should be able to take Amanda Cooper down ASAP. You know, we've seen her strike and have a close fight against Mackenzie Dern in a stand-up battle, in a primarily stand-up battle. And, you know, Mackenzie Dern was still able to come out with the decision in that fight. I think that Ashley Yoder's kicks will be a determining factor in this fight. I think that if she's able to use them correctly, you know, uses it to keep the space, and then mixes it up and tries to take you know, tossing a takedown there, I think that she'll be able to get Amanda Cooper down, and she could work slowly to get some sort of submission. One thing to note, Ashley Yoder's takedowns are kind of impressive. You know, like against Angela Hill, you know, she timed some takedowns very well, and I think that's very possible that she could do that against Amanda Cooper. So I completely understand why this fight is slightly favored towards Ashley Yoder, and I'm actually going to pick Ashley Yoder as well. I think that she'll get the submission in the first round. Moving on to the next fight is probably one of my favorite prospects of all time, Mr. Luis Pena against Mike Trizano. This should have been the finals of the Ultimate Fighter that they were on together. Unfortunately, Luis Pena, I think, had to withdraw due to some sort of injury. But here we have it, you know, the unofficial Ultimate Fighter finale. Violent Bob Ross, probably one of the best nicknames in MMA. Luis Pena, you know, he's a very intriguing prospect. He's only 5-0 at the moment. He trains at AKA, one of the top teams out there. And he looked like a complete monster in his last fight against Richie Smallin, in a fight that I bet as well. I believe I took that fight to knock out a decision, and my man Luis Pena was able to get that finished within the first round. So he's a very intriguing prospect, very good wrestling base, very long, very aggressive, great kicks, amazing stand-up, great range as well. He's a very big guy too. I believe, what is he? He's 6'3" with a 78-inch reach, yeah, it's just ridiculous that he's able to be at that frame and that stature at 155. It's going to create a lot of problems. And for a guy like Mike Trizano, who's only standing at about 5'11" with 71-inch reach, this is going to be a very interesting fight for him. You know, that Joe Giannetti fight, that was kind of close to it in the sense that Joe Giannetti, I believe he has the same kind of physical structure as, okay, he's slightly shorter than Luis Pena, but he relatively almost has the same reach as Luis Pena. So Joe Giannetti, the frame that he was able to show to Mike Trizano is kind of similar to what Luis Pena is going to be able to show, but the styles are so much different. You know, that third round, I don't know what the fuck Giannetti was on, but he did jack shit. You know, he was playing around a little bit too much. That was a very, very crucial round in terms of the scoring, in my opinion. I thought it was 1-1 going into that last round, and Joe Giannetti just did not have that urgency. And believe you me, Luis Pena will have that urgency from bell to bell, from first round to third round. And I don't even think he's going to need 3 rounds. I think he's going to get the finish in this fight. I think, you know, Trizano's a very tough guy. He's sitting at 6-0 at the moment. But Luis Pena he's a problem in this division. I promise you guys. Luis Pena is a problem. He's still kind of green. You know, he's 5-0. Give him a little bit more experience. He's had, a handful of amateur fights as well. But give this guy some time to grow. I just want to confirm his age as well. Yeah, he's only 25, so give him time to grow. There's no fucking rush. And with a team like AKA behind him, this guy's going to be in a complete wrecking machine in the lightweight division. And he could also go up to the welterweight as well if he wants. So that's something to keep in mind on a very young and talented up-and-coming guy in Luis Pena. So I'm going to take Luis Pena by second round submission over Mike Trizano. Next fight, we got another prospect coming up. Maycee Barber, 5-0 against Hannah Cifers, who's 8-2 at the moment. This is another intriguing fight, and this is actually another dog of the night play I have. I have this fight to actually not go to a decision. We've seen both fighters be able to finish most of their fights. Maycee Barber has gone to a decision only once, and she's 4-0. Pro, 1-0 amateur, and she finished her amateur fight as well in 20 seconds. So they both have the aggressiveness. Hannah Cifers as well. Let me just give you guys the fucking stat on that too. She's 8-2 right now, and she's only gotten to a decision in 3 of her victories out of 8 fights. So it's a very I think the stand-up Muay Thai base of Hannah Cifers is going to be the ingredient in this fight that allows her to not go to a decision. She's very good in the clinch too. Like, she's good in the clinch. I won't say very good. She's good in the clinch. She has heavy hands. She throws with heat. And Maycee Barber moves very well and uses her kicks. In the last fight, we saw Maycee Barber kind of use her grappling a little bit more. She used the clinch a lot more, and eventually was able to get a very late finish in her last fight against Jamie Colleen. But with this Hannah Cifers fight, I think if she tries that, she's going to run into some issues with Hannah Cifers' Muay Thai and her Muay Thai clinch. So that's going to be something to look out for. But I think that if Maycee Barber gets Hannah Cifers down, she might be able to pull off some sort of submission. But if Hannah Cifers is able to keep this on the feet, I think she's going to land a shot on Maycee Barber and maybe get a TKO finish. Or even, she might be able to latch onto a choke after rocking her or something. So I think the fact that this was lined at plus 125, I was happy to take the underdog shot on this just due to the style of both of these ladies. So I think it's going to play, it's going to be a very fun fight to watch, and there's a high probability, in my opinion, for this fight to not go to a decision. Just a quick note on Maycee Barber. She's only 20 years old, maybe 21 at the max now, and she's on the main card of a fight night. That's a lot of promotion and a big push for a girl that's only, going to be going into her 5th fight. So hopefully this doesn't blow up in the UFC's face. It's obvious they want to get her the stage and the spotlight. She's a little cutie, she might be able to sell a little bit more tickets just based off her looks. But Hannah Cifers, she has 10 fights. That's 6 more than Maycee Barber has had, so just something to keep an eye on. But I'm going to officially take Maycee Barber by 1st round submission. Next fight is a fight that I've been looking forward to ever since it's been announced. We got kind of not really even up and comer anymore. Ray Borg, who's already fought for the title. Unfortunately had that crazy armbar loss to Demetrius Johnson. He's going up against a veteran in Joseph Benavidez, who kind of looked like a shell of himself in his last fight. I bet on Joseph Benavidez in that last fight. I thought he was going to be able to impose his wrestling a little bit more on Sergio Pettis and was going to be able to grind Pettis out a little bit more. He lost a split decision, but he just looked like a shell of himself. He was coming off a lengthy layoff, so that's maybe one thing. It's been about roughly a year and a half before he had fought that Sergio Pettis fight. But against a guy like Ray Borg, who is probably just as good, if not better, than Joseph Benavidez at these things in this time of their career, Ray Borg's going to be the younger, more explosive guy that probably, has a fire under his ass due to everything he's dealing with his child. I'm sure everybody's heard about it. That's got to be a very motivating factor to go out and fight and get some more money, because, if he loses, he only gets half of his paycheck. If he wins, he brings it all home, and he's able to put more food on the table and be a little bit more supportive for the family who's going through a really tough time with the kid who's been in and out of the hospital. So there's the negative aspect of it, where people can say that he maybe he's not focusing on training as much. Maybe his mind is, he's kind of a vegetable in the gym and his brain is just at home. Or, I listened to Brandon Schaub's podcast earlier this week, and he was talking about how, he's pretty much taken care of Ray Borg, where Ray Borg can just focus on training. So I don't know when he was able to do that for him and how much time Ray Borg has kind of, been able to just focus on the fight. But I would take my chances on Ray Borg at plus money in this case. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to come by the plus money anymore. But I think he has a very good shot of winning this fight. The only way he would lose this fight, I think, is if, the whole son thing and hospital stuff really got to him. So unless Joseph Benavidez also comes back and looks like the guy of old, the guy that beat Ali Bagavutinov and John Moraga and Dustin Ortiz and those guys. But I don't know. At this point, I don't think he has it anymore. So I'm going to take Ray Borg by decision in this fight. Next up, we got a fight that I was actually looking to make a lock of the night play for me, but after doing a little bit more tape studying, I decided against it. We got Germaine Randamie against Raquel Pennington. This is Raquel Pennington's first fight since she lost to Amanda Nunes back at UFC 224 in Brazil. Yep, UFC 224. I just had to fact check myself. Yeah, that was a one-sided beatdown. Besides the fact that Raquel Pennington was able to get Amanda Nunes down at the end of the second round, it was all Amanda Nunes. That fight will probably be most known for the fact that Raquel Pennington wanted out of that fight after the fourth round when she told her coaches that I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore, and her coaches pretty much willed her back into it and then got her nearly killed in that fifth round where she eventually lost by TKO in that fifth round or halfway through it. But she is back after roughly 6 months off. That was a very devastating loss for her, and she's coming back to a very tough fight. Germaine Randamie is somebody not to, this is going to be kind of funny to say considering what happened with her, but, people should be scared of her. And the only reason I say that is everybody knows the whole Germaine Randamie and Cyborg thing. She literally dropped the title because she didn't want to fight Chris Cyborg. But either way, Germaine Randamie, she's very, very explosive with her striking. Beautiful Muay Thai, beautiful kickboxing, very strong striker. Pretty much outstruck Holly Holm en route to winning the unanimous decision in that fight. But say what you want about the after the bell punches. The second round one, that one was definitely after the bell, so that was fucked up. But the one after the third round bell, it missed. She threw the strikes, but it missed. Those strikes missed. So technically, for me, it was only one time where she hit her after the bell. But regardless, that's fucked up. But during the actual rounds, when you're actually supposed to be throwing punches, she did very well. Holly Holm was the one initiating the striking, but Germaine Randamie was able to fire her fucking cross and land pretty much every time Holly Holm tried closing the distance. And I think that was the deciding factor in this fight. In this fight against Raquel Pennington, Germaine Randamie has a little bit more of a size advantage than when she fought Holly Holm. She has a 72.5 reach. She has a 72.5 inch reach, while Raquel Pennington has a 65.5 or 67.5 inch reach. So she, holds a little bit of an advantage there, and I think she's really going to make use of that because she needs to keep Raquel Pennington on the outside. She needs to make sure that she's not, closing the distance and making sure that she's not, initiating Raquel Pennington's grappling. Otherwise, she's probably going to get taken down, even though she's shown pretty good takedown defense. Holly Holm, I think, went 0 for 5 on takedowns, and the only time she got taken down was Amanda Nunes. And other than that, she's never been taken down in any of her UFC fights. The only thing that kind of turned me off from Germaine Randamie in this fight was the fact that she was kind of being, in the Anna Almos fight, Anna Almos was able to kind of hold her against the cage, kind of impose her will a little bit more than I was more comfortable with, because Raquel Pennington, she might be able to do that. She might be able to kind of push Germaine Randamie against the cage and fight a little bit harder than Holly Holm and Anna Almos did for takedowns, and she might get them. That's her only path to victory. However, I think it's going to actually go down as Raquel Pennington trying to close the distance, Germaine Randamie lands some beautiful crosses, and just lights up Raquel Pennington, unfortunately. And I think that she could possibly get a late finish. We don't know how much the altitude is going to play into factor in this fight, as Germaine Randamie won a full 5 rounds in her last fight. But, you know, I think she paints a picture on Raquel Pennington's face, and she probably wins by third round finish, you know, dropping her with the cross and then just following up with punches or ground and pound. So I got GDR by third round finish. Next fight, co-main event time. We got a fucking barn burner. I'm so stoked for this fight. Donald Cowboy Cerrone against Mike Perry. You know, Cowboy has never really been in much of a boring fight, and Mike Perry, we know, Mike Perry really likes to engage in those firefights and really thrives in those firefights. Like, the guy is just a nutcase. He's fucking hilarious. I want to bring up the whole Indian, Native American video that he did, or Native American inspired video that he did, where he was like the soldier and all that. But I don't want none of that, those political problems. None of that social justice warrior bullshit. Don't. Before I even get started on that, let's just get back into the fight. Mike Perry won his last fight against Paul Felder by split decision. This time around, he fights Donald Cowboy Cerrone, who is probably the most complete fighter that he's fought up until this point. You know, the Jake Ellenberger fight was a guy who's already way past his prime. Santiago Ponzinibbio, you know, very good stand-up striker, and Mike Perry was getting frustrated. Same with the Max Griffin fight. Max Griffin's kind of known more for his wrestling. He was able to just run and jab, and able to outpoint Mike Perry in that fight. Paul Felder was able to, you know, engage a little bit more. That's where Mike Perry kind of thrived. He was able to land the heavier shots. In this Cowboy Cerrone fight, I think we're going to get a more methodical Cowboy. Now, it all comes down to Cowboy's confidence level going into this fight, and if he's able to maintain it during the fight. We've seen him break against other guys. We've seen him break against Nate Diaz. We've seen him break against Darren Till. Cowboy is his own worst enemy in a sense that if his confidence level isn't there, he's not able to perform. We saw what it's like when we have a Cowboy who's all systems go. We've seen him finish Jim Miller twice in one fight. We've seen him put Matt Brown to sleep for eternity. We've seen Cowboy pull off these victories. The Yancy Medeiros one as well. But it's all his mentality. I think he's defeated when he goes into these fights where he gets finished. You know, even in the Nate Diaz fight, he didn't get finished in that fight, but he's kind of defeated already going into those fights. In this Mike Perry fight, Mike Perry has that persona, that puff my chest, and that the gorilla-like thing where, you know, somebody's gonna die, somebody's gonna get cut, somebody's gonna this, that. You know, I think that might actually shake down on Cowboy Cerrone, and we might see Mike Perry actually impose his will and, you know, land on Cowboy Cerrone and get the finish. It hurts me to say that because I think that Cerrone is capable of making it a closer and better fight, but, you know, everything we've seen in the past, guys of this confidence level and craziness, when Cowboy goes up against these types of guys, he kind of wilts, and Mike Perry is no different in my opinion. So I think we see Perry get a second round finish. Cowboy, if he's able to stay disciplined, if he possibly could even get this fight to the ground, he has a very good chance of submitting Mike Perry, but I don't think it gets there. I think every time that the fight, you know, the distance gets a little bit close, I think Perry's going to scare Cowboy off with a lot of power shots, and Perry's going to eventually land one of those that puts Cowboy out, so I'm going to take Mike Perry by second round finish. But I'm not confident in betting Mike Perry at the minus 200 roughly or so price tag he's at, just due to the fact that we may see a confident Cowboy, but I'm not confident that we'll see a confident Cowboy. Kind of redundant, but you know what the fuck I mean. Main event time. Initially it was supposed to be Frankie Edgar against Korean Zombie. Unfortunately, Frankie Edgar suffered an injury, and now we get Frankie Edgar's last victim, Yair Rodriguez, who has not competed since that fight. He's taken a long time off since that beating he took to Frankie Edgar back in May of 2017. It was a second round doctor stoppage. You know, Frankie Edgar fucked him up. He pretty much took him down at will and just fucked his shit up. I don't know if Chancellor Young's going to employ that kind of game plan that Frankie Edgar was able to, nor do I think he's capable of doing it to the pace and effectiveness that Frankie Edgar was able to. I think that Chancellor Young has a very aggressive style. He's very fun to watch. Pretty much all the fights that you've ever seen of him are very entertaining. And I think the recipe that we have in this fight, or the ingredients that we have for this fight, is going to have just fireworks. It's going to be an amazing fight. I think Yair Rodriguez is going to throw off a bunch of his spinning shit and all of his flashy strikes, and Chan Sung Jung is just going to come forward and try to make it a brawl. I think he's going to try to make it push the pace as much as he can on Yair so that Yair is not comfortable throwing those strikes. But I think at certain points we'll see Yair land some of those strikes, and I wouldn't even be surprised to see Yair try to take this fight to the ground. So he might try to bank some rounds if he thinks this fight's going to go the full 25 minutes. But personally, I don't think the fight goes 25 minutes. I was very split between taking this fight to not go to a decision, and my initial fight that I took was the Julian Erosa and Devonte Smith. But I eventually went with Smith and Rosa. This fight, there is this slight possibility that, just to get back into the win column, Yair Rodriguez might lean on his wrestling a little bit more. But Chan Sung Jung's, his ground game's nothing to sneeze at either. That fight he had against Dustin Poirier was just fucking bonkers. That shit was just, there's a lot of reversals, takedowns, submission attempts, submission that he eventually got. So Yair's going to want to be careful if he wants to take it to the ground. But this could be a very interesting fight on the feet if Chan Sung Jung doesn't decide to push the pace and try to stay in Yair's face. If he decides to stay on the outside, Yair's going to have a field day with him. We've seen, how fast Yair's able to get his kicks up there. How fast he's able to pull off some of these spinning punches and these spinning techniques. And Chan Sung Jung has taken beatings for a while. He hasn't really been put out that much. The last one that comes to mind is the George Roop one. Even his TKO loss to Jose Aldo, you got to remember, that was a shoulder injury. His shoulder was completely out of its fucking socket. It was disgusting to look at. And unfortunately, that cost him the fight. So after he served his military time, he came back in 2017 and fought Dennis Bermudez. He got a quick finish in the first round over Bermudez there, but since then he was scheduled to fight Ricardo Lamas. He was scheduled to fight, Frank Edgar, who's now Yair Rodriguez, but he tore his ACL. It's going to be very hard for him to come back from that. He's, how old is he now? He's 31, so he's kind of still in his prime, but considering all the circumstances of not fighting for almost 3 years or 2 years and coming back, and now coming back from an ACL surgery as well, something to consider. So I would advise maybe taking a poke at Yair Rodriguez at the underdog odds that he's currently at as well. I think that, even though Yair hasn't fought in a while either, I think that just the youth and his ability to probably, have more tools in terms of being able to take it to the ground and keeping it on the feet, and even his knockout ability. I think that he has the power to put Chan Sung Jung or put him down, finish him with TKO or something like that. But ultimately, I think I'm going to go with Yair Rodriguez by third round finish. I think the first two rounds is more of them just filling each other out, and then eventually in the third round we see a finish from Yair on the feet, maybe some sort of highlight reel finish, unfortunately for Korean Zombie. So, final pick, Yair Rodriguez, third round finish. That's pretty much it for UFC Denver. Decent card. I was kind of looking forward more so to seeing Frankie Edgar in the main event. Unfortunately, he did get injured, so maybe we see him come back a little bit. Hopefully, first quarter of next year. It would be great to see him back in there. But this is a bit of a pivotal fight in that featherweight division. Yair could put himself right back into the discussion after that unfortunate Frankie Edgar loss, or Korean Zombie could continue to rise to the occasion in his comeback and get back into the top 5 to top 10 range. Next week we got UFC Buenos Aires, I believe it is. It's Neo Magny against Santiago Ponzinibbio. The odds literally just came out for that, I think, yesterday. So I'm kind of liking the fact that they came out a little bit early. And props to the odds makers, man. Like, normally we would have to wait until at least the Sunday before the fights to get these odds. But now we're getting them almost a week and a half to 2 weeks earlier. So big shout out to all the odds makers. I don't know if Nick Kalakis is still doing that shit, but whoever else is putting them out early, we love it. It allows the lines to play out a little bit fast or more, and we give them more time to kind of just see where they eventually level out to. So I've been able to study those odds. I've been studying UFC Buenos Aires for the past couple of days. I'm gonna probably have bets out for it by Sunday or so keep your eyes out for that. But this weekend, UFC Denver, I got 3 bets. check out my Twitter. Check out MMA dot MMALOTN.ca. All my shit's on there. Lock Fight League going great. We're going into the last week. Tomorrow's week 3. So, good luck to everybody that's involved with that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully our bets hit and we get back on the winning track. Other than that, I'll see you guys next week. Later. Bye.